On the western outskirts of Carbon County is the town of Medicine Bow and the Como Bluffs. The Como Bluffs are an essential piece to the history of Carbon County. But if you peel back the historical onion, that history encompasses Wyoming, the West, and even further back to the prehistoric eras of planet Earth. The Como Bluffs have produced some of the most impressive paleontological finds. The western United States looked vastly different back then than it did today. Carbon County is made up of high desert terrain. However, 65 to 100 million years ago, it was hot and humid and heavily forested. During the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods, many of the most famous dinosaurs wandered the region, much as the deer and pronghorn do today. The bluffs, as well as many other geological formations throughout the West, were prime dinosaur hunting grounds. During the 1870s, paleontology was the rage in the scientific world. Two of the main scientists that were at the forefront of this dinosaur rush were O.C. Marsh and Edward Cope. O.C. Marsh was a relative of wealthy banker George Peabody. Marsh petitioned his uncle to fund a paleontology museum at Yale, and he set forth to fill it with specimens from his digs. Not only did Marsh have access to funds from Peabody, but he had the backing of Yale University and its vast academic resources. His foil in this story was Edward Cope. Cope was a member of the U.S. Geological Survey. Additionally, he was a professor and amateur fossil hunter, herpetologist, and zoologist. It was through this governmental organization that he was able to make his own paleontological discoveries. During the American Civil War, he traveled throughout Europe touring museums. There was some controversy, however, that Cope was merely traveling to avoid being drafted into the Union Army. During the 1870s, he began prospecting the West and publishing papers at a rapid pace noting his finds. This would ultimately hurt Cope's credibility, although it didn't stop him. Due to the rapid nature of his publications, there were many errors and several of his labels were withdrawn over time. Marsh, however, was able to publish in big scientific journals. Additionally, he didn't publish at the furious pace of Edward Cope, allowing him to have more time and less errors in his work. The discovery of the vast fossil beds led to a dinosaur rush to this region of Wyoming in the border of Carbon County. Marsh and Cope began going back and forth about getting specimens out of the Como Bluffs region. Marsh was able to work several deals with paleontologists to fund the digs and pay the diggers. Additionally, Marsh attempted to keep the site secret, but eventually word got out. Cope and Marsh began spending small fortunes to get the best finds out of the bluffs. From 1877 onward until the 1880s, the two pulled hundreds of specimens out of the boneyards. Significant mammal discoveries were found as well that helped progress the field of paleontological mammalians from the Jurassic period. While the historic finds were taking place, the Cope-Marsh rivalry was reaching bizarre proportions. Diggers and paleontologists from each camp were spying on each other, sabotaging each other, and sometimes engaging in physical violence, even going as far as destroying damaged fossils so they would not fall into the other camp's hands. Cope's findings were filling up his personal house in the meantime, and he continued his rapid writing of articles. This allowed Marsh to meticulously pick apart Cope's findings and point out errors. Marsh at this time was guilty of errors as well. During this time, he infamously published a finding that placed the skull of a Brachiosaurus on the body of a Diplodocus. Marsh's advantage was that he had an entire museum to fill, and he held more quarry claims on the bluffs. By the 1880s, their rivalry faded. Marsh was able to use his extensive Washington, D.C. connections and wealthy connections to pull himself out of the sensationalist aspects of the rivalry. Cope was running out of money due to his personal financing of the diggings, and additionally he began to invest more money in gold and silver mining. Overall, despite their petty and deeply personal rivalry, the race produced 136 new species, including several subspecies of the Triceratops, Allosaurus, Diplodocus, Stegosaurus, and the Camarasaurus. Additionally, the theory that birds are more closely descended from dinosaurs than previously thought was a product of the finds from the Como Bluffs. This theory still stands today, and more evidence is discovered to back it up. The first complete skeletons of dinosaurs and prehistoric mammals were found as well. On the other side of the coin, many errors between the two have also been brought to light. In the haste to defeat each other, many of the complete skeletons were put together incorrectly in order to one-up the other. In one way, I interpret this as scientific knowledge and paradigms changing, but on the other hand, the rivalry between the two was so personal, and the desire to beat the other no matter the cost led to disregard for their findings. Either way, their findings in the bluffs were monumental. Jumping ahead several decades, one of the most eccentric pieces of Carbon County was erected. Thomas and Grace Boylan built a homestead on the current-day border between Carbon and Albany County on Highway 30 and 287 in 1908. Thomas Boylan began to pick through the fossils in the bluffs, hoping to piece together a complete skeleton for a roadside attraction. He found many fossils, but unfortunately did not have enough for a complete skeleton. Thomas began to work on a new idea. He had found 5,076 bones and 102,166 pounds of fossils and bones as well. He took all these fossils and built a cabin with them, which was completed in 1932. It affectionately became known as the world's oldest building, or the building that used to walk, and was featured in Ripley's Believe It or Not. Inside the fossil cabin, the Boylans managed a small paleontological museum and a gas station. When Thomas passed away in 1947, his wife ran the attraction until the 1960s. At this time, I-80 was being constructed and sucked a lot of traffic off of Highway 30, and it was sold in 1974. Unfortunately, the fossil cabin still sits alone on Highway 30. If you wish to see it, follow Highway 30 about 5 miles east of Medicine Bow and gaze up to the bluffs that influence the study of paleontology. Currently, there is a plan in the works to move it to the Medicine Bow Museum. They need your help, though. Despite being close to Medicine Bow, there is a significant financial challenge of moving this fantastic building to the museum grounds. If you are interested in helping the Medicine Bow Museum reach their goal of getting the fossil cabin to the Medicine Bow Museum grounds, you can reach them by following the link in the description. This building is an exciting and eccentric piece of Carbon County history, and a history that stretches back hundreds of millions of years. The Como Bluffs are an essential part of understanding the prehistoric landscape of this region of Wyoming. Additionally, it influences our contemporary understanding of Carbon County as well. World-famous and contemporary paleontologist Robert Backer said, quote, "The dinosaurs that came from Como Bluff not only filled museums, they filled magazine articles, textbooks, and people's minds." End quote. Thank you for watching this episode from the Carbon County Museum. Once again, please contact the Medicine Bow Museum if you are interested in assisting their efforts to move the fossil cabin to their museum site. Once again, the link is in the description below. I would also ask that if you enjoyed this video, please give us a like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more exciting stories from the Carbon County Museum.